All right, I wanted to give you some video help with some of these assignments that I posted. So I'm going to start with the assignment from 423. So it is that was a week ago. Start with circle equations. The question says determine the equation of a circle in standard form. So what we're going to do is the circle equation will always be of the form x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to the radius squared. And h and k is the center. And r is the radius. So we're going to take this problem here that we have, and we'll apply it to our Deltamath problem. So in this circle, it looks like the center of that circle is right there. And if I'm looking at that coordinate, that is right 1 and up 6. So that coordinate is 1, 6. And if I count from the center to the edge, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 units. So the radius is 4. So going back and kind of working it out, knowing that my center is 1, 6, and the radius is 4, I can fit it into this equation by saying x minus 1 squared plus y minus 6 squared is equal to 4 squared. 4 squared is 4 times 4, which is 16. So we'll want to make that equal to 16 when we type it in. So our input into Deltamath should look like that. X minus 1 parentheses squared plus y minus 6 parentheses squared equals 16. So let's get that in there. Just type in parentheses x minus 1, close it up. You can do Shift 6. There's also a calculator if you prefer that route, if you're on your phone or whatever, and you can raise it to a power that way. But I'm all about those keyboard shortcuts. So Shift 6 plus parentheses y minus 6, close it up, squared, and then you're going to say equals 16. Submit your answer, and it gives you a green check, so we know we're good. And it gives you the general form here that we can plug it in, and that information too. So yeah, just remember when you're putting it into the formula that you switch the signs. So if it is, if the coordinates are positive, then it's going to be minus in the formula. Let's do just maybe one more of this one. All right, this center here looks like it's right there. So that coordinate does not go left or right. So that would be 0, and it goes up 1. So the center would be 0, 1, and the radius is 2. Center is 0, 1, radius is 2. So you could type x minus 0 squared plus parentheses y minus 1 squared equals 2 squared. And that might accept that answer. So let's see. And you get away with doing that. However, you don't need the plus 0 if it's 0, and you want to make 2 squared equal to 4. Let's see if we can find one that has negatives. Oh, here's one. So in this case, the center would be -7, comma, +5, and the radius is 2. So if the x coordinate's -7, then in the parentheses you do x plus 7 squared plus y, and the y coordinate is 5, so y minus 5 squared. Now the radius is 2, so you would want to equal that to 4 if you're simplifying it. And I don't think it'll accept a double negative, but I'm gonna see if it does. So if it's x minus -7 instead of plus 7, it actually will allow that because 2 negatives make a positive. So you can do that if you want to keep it negative and use the formula. So that's that skill. And then you also will have circle equations with the distance formula. And let me show you how to do that one. on this problem here, you're given a circle, and it's going to give you the center and 1 point on the circle. So I'm going to write that down, and we'll switch to the paper. So the easiest way for me to do this problem is to, since I know the center is -6, 6, now I'm questioning if that is the center. So yeah, it is the center. Then the first thing I'll do is I'll say my formula is going to be x plus 6, switch to sign, squared, plus parentheses y minus 6, switch to sign, squared. But I don't know what the radius is. So I'm going to leave that as r squared. Now I can get the radius a couple different ways. I can use the distance formula between these 2 points. The distance formula is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared, so -5 minus -6 squared, plus y2 minus y1 squared, 9 minus 6 squared. And that'll give me my radius, because that is the distance between those 2 points. So we can do that in Desmos. SQRT, parentheses, -5 minus -6 squared, plus 9 minus 6 squared. It gives me about 3.16. Now, in order to put it in the equation, I'd want to square that number. So if I took this number and I copied it or retyped it and I squared it, it gives me exactly 10. So I know that the radius is the square root of 10. So that means the radius squared is going to cancel that square root out. So it's just going to be equal to 10. So you'll put in x plus 6 squared plus y minus 6 squared equals 10. Now, when I put this in the answer box and it gives me the right, counts it right, it actually goes through and does it a different way in here, which I find kind of interesting, and you may want to look at it that way too. So let me type that answer in so you can see what's going on with that. All right, so it says using distance formula. However, it doesn't really use distance formula. It uses Pythagorean theorem. You remember a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And that's a little bit less involved than trying to plug it into the distance formula. So that radius is the hypotenuse in this case. And if you think about this distance here being 1, you're going from the center, which is at -6, 6. So you're going to go right 1 to be at -5. Then you're going to go up 3 to go from 6 to 9. Then those just form the legs of a right triangle, 1 squared plus 3 squared. And 1 squared is 1, 3 squared is 9, so 1 plus 9 is 10. So you can get that distance that way too, which is the same number that we got using the distance formula. And it gives you the square root of 10. You can square that to give 10. Also on Desmos, I have to remind you guys that Desmos does do distance by calculating distance. So if you type in distance, parentheses, parentheses, and you type in the 2 coordinates. So the 2 coordinates were -6, 6, close up those parentheses, put a comma, and then the other coordinate was -5, 9. So it gives you the distance that way too. And if you want to square that, you can just square it and it gives you 10. So the distance squared is equal to 10, the radius squared. And that actually can work for all the problems here. So let's do one more. Determine the equation of the circle graph below. So in this problem here, your center is -3, -6. So both the x and y coordinates are negative. So you're going to switch both signs when you plug it into the formula. So let's work that out. So -3, -6, and 0, -5. First thing I would do is plug it into the circle equation formula, x plus 3 squared plus y plus 6 squared. And I don't know the radius squared, so I'll just leave that as r squared. Now I can get that. If I'm utilizing the Pythagorean Theorem route that they did, what I would do is I would make a right triangle, and I would figure out how far it is horizontally and vertically. And if I'm going from -3 to 0, that distance is going to be 3. And if I'm going from -6 to -5, that distance is going to be 1. So that right triangle, to get the radius, would be 3 squared plus 1 squared equals the radius squared, equals c squared. And that's going to be 9 plus 1, and that's going to be 10 again. So the radius squared is 10, and the radius is the square root of 10. So when you square the radius, it's going to be just like the last one. Your equation is going to be equal to 10 at the end. So you would type x plus 3 squared plus y plus 6 squared equals 10. Let's put that in. And we are good. So that's the method for this assignment here. I hope that was useful and that was helpful. Thank you.